industrial and employer district don't fit with the commensurate area around it with agricultural, family farms, estate lots. You just mentioned, heard Mr. Andrioli talk about people wanting to build on those plots of land for their family. We did that very same thing 2006, 15 years ago. So that's my first point. Secondly, with this proposed land use, we've heard nothing about the infrastructure that would have to be developed to support said land use. So you look at 1200, which is the divide between Boone County and Hamilton County. You look at the road south of the airport, East 200 South. Those are small country roads. Country is in the name, right? So if you're going to put employer districts and commercial, light industrial on those roads on 1200 and now Silverthorne and our property, you're already not taking into account additional volume of traffic, size of vehicles, weight of vehicles for this proposed land use. So that's my second point. It'd probably be unfair to mention that just this past weekend, a cyclist was killed on East 200 South. I don't know if everybody on the council knows that, but these roads are heavily traveled paths for people that enjoy the cycling pastime, and you're not going to be doing the residents of this area any favors if you continue to develop this area. And secondly, my last point is, are you really looking at the interests of Zionsville residents, or are you looking at the interest of the airport? Right? If you want to develop property and business, go do it in the Zionsville Business Corporate Park. It's already got the roads, the sewer system, the infrastructure there. You've got a great big corporate building that lives vacated. Build and develop that area. Don't try and build and develop all this other area outside of the airport to support the airport's interests. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. President. Mike Reinbold, 2982 Stone Creek Drive, which is in the Fieldstone development directly south of the airport. Just want to mention briefly, I had the opportunity to join the Land Use Commission towards the end of the project. I want to congratulate the parties involved to bring the report forward, and appreciate their efforts, and would ask that for any future considerations by the town to be a representative on any future efforts regarding that land use and the area supporting and surrounding the airport. I would echo Mr. Andrioli's comments regarding property owners' rights. I think he said that very well, and appreciate his comments. And finally, outside of Commissioner Traylor, I will be interested in learning what the other elected officials' view of this project going forward, and understand that it is a 20 to 30 year outlook in terms of this area, and would appreciate that. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
I'm Lee Bowman. I live at 11324 Everkern Court in Brookhaven, just off 300 South, directly in the flight path. And actually, I don't have a lot of comment around that. One of the puzzles I had, and I didn't hear a lot of discussion on it, was that there was some discovery in terms of the tax implications on buildings and development within the area. And it sounded like that was new to this commission, and there was a good explanation brought forward. But I am concerned about the tax on the city and county to develop that area where most of the infrastructure would suggest, the people who would benefit and work in those surrounding mixed development areas would probably come from Westfield or Carmel, where you've got 32 as opposed to these small country roads. So it seems like most of the economic opportunity is probably to Hamilton County, not to Boone County. Most of the development cost and infrastructure over the next 5 to 25 years may fall on Zionsville. And then there's the concerns of the folks who live in Zionsville and the residents in the area. You know, I certainly could do with a few less flights that come over my patio and hinder my ability to talk to the family. But I think from a town perspective, we need to understand the cost and benefit of this plan in terms of taxes and the ability of the city to identify opportunity costs where we might want to develop other parts of the 50 square miles at Zionsville. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak?
So I do have one more comment. I want to thank Mr. Andreoli. I think you said it better than I did. What I was trying to portray when I was talking about the diagram with concentric circles was saying in that first circle, you've got agricultural in here, residential within that zone. And how do you protect that so that that is able to exist and thrive and not be diminished? Because when that person goes to sell or do whatever they want to do, there's this overlay on top of it that says, we're not really supportive of that. And again, going back to when this comes before us and we have to decide whether or not this is in keeping with the comprehensive plan, this comprehensive plan, then to your point in staff's report becomes the dictating factor. So finding some way to preserve that ability on those agricultural lots while respecting that we can't have a high density development or don't want to support a high density development, but we do want to support the special uses that currently exist in our agriculture. So I don't know how that gets worked in. My thought was it was a diagram that you have these rings that talk about what happens in these kind of concentric circles building out from the airport. I'm not as concerned about the development and traffic and tax revenue and infrastructure. My guess is this, Wayne, I would guess if somebody's right to do a bunch of development up there, a TIF district probably gets formed in that area to help support infrastructure potentially.
That would seem likely.
Yeah. So I think that funding for the infrastructure is there. I think that you would find that a lot of the workers in those facilities would probably come more from Lebanon than they would, and from Westfield, but likely not over in Carmel. I think the plan is supportive of that. So I think if we can find a way in there to ensure that those folks that have farm acreage and still have the ability to leverage that special exception without this plan being used as the stick that keeps them from doing that, I think is appropriate.
The plan is one factor in the determination of what gets approved or not approved, by the plan commission. So if a replat or something along that line is ministerial in nature, it's not necessarily we have to, say the plan says no and we can't do it. I mean, there's obviously it depends on who's on the plan commission, who are members, that sort of thing. But we recently, I think last year or 2 years ago, we recently split a piece of property off so somebody could build a home right next to the airport. So
yeah,
I understand where you're coming from, and I guess it does. The makeup of the plan commission is what's going to be the key thing. I mean, if some of us are still on here in 30 years, probably not. But you might remember.
There's a ramp over here. We'll be able to get you up here.
Well, as one of those people that I'm not going to vote on this because on my 20 acres that is on 1100 and backs up to the airport. And my husband and I don't see us raising goats. Okay, we got a farmer who farms our back 14 acres. We're not going to get into agro-tourism and make goat cheese. It's not going to happen. We're trying to figure out how many more years we can keep the farm going before we retire. So when we get ready to sell it, I want to be able to get the highest and best price for my land so I can afford the nursing home when I have to go to.
Well,
That's my financial plan.
I guess based upon some of the stuff that was raised, I mean, this is a 20 or 30-year plan. There's no rush to get this thing done right now. I mean, another month potentially is going to make a difference. I mean, how would you want to try to address some of these property issues? I guess.
Well, let's see what our consultant
So
has to say.
what do you?
Well, I think that it certainly is, the comments that you made help clarify something. I think that there is a point, and I'm starting to understand, Commissioner, what you're going to in your concentric circles, because I think there is a point here in the center of this where we say it does not make sense to have one house become two, because if you do that with multiples, two houses start to become four, or four houses start to become eight. We have to be very careful about that within a certain location. But outside of that location, the second concentric circle, it might be appropriate. But some of those places closest to the airport, we've got to be very careful of. But it may not be the answer is you can't. The answer may also be, if the airport doesn't want to see development there, they may have to come in and purchase some of that property. So it kind of fits both ways, that there's a little bit of that has to fit both ways into this conversation. And there's two ways to answer most of the problems here. But I do think we want to come back and define an area where we all say, generally, the goal is that we don't add more houses in here because that's going to hurt the airport and what they're trying to do. But after a certain point, maybe it is a minor subdivision is okay. And then past that, maybe it's okay to have more density to it. And that's what I think that we can create that diagram to clarify that in a lot better detail. This helps me understand what you're looking for.
I'm more than happy to make this more expedient, and I don't know whether we're allowed to do this, but I'm more than happy to review a mock-up of that to at least address my concerns, so that when it gets presented at the next meeting, you're not getting my full breadth of comments. So,
Much appreciated.
yeah.
So we're looking at a continuance.
Thanks.
All right. Yep. Is there a motion to continue this matter to the October 18th meeting?
So I move to continue docket number 2021-29-CPA to the October 18th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Janice?
Mr. Franz,
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski, I can vote continue it, aye. All right. Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mrs. Walker. Aye. Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Fedor,
Aye.
Ms. Madrick,
Aye.
She's still there?
okay.
All right, the motion carries 7-0. We'll see you next month. Maybe we can get done with this. Thanks. You're right. Next time on the docket is 2021-23 PPA, the Park, 401 South 4th Street and 500 South Main Street. Petition for primary plat amendment to provide a central water system supporting a separate fire protection main as per section 193.056 of the subdivision control ordinance and the urban PUD planned unit development. Petitioner present.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the record, again, my name is Matt Price. I'm here tonight with map 1861 development, which some of you know this, but I'll provide some background this evening. The M in map is Matt. It's my project together with my two partners, Andrew Hurd and Paul McCoy, who are in the front rows. Joe, if you could go that first slide. Paul, Andrew, and I are here tonight with our development partner, Dave Berman from Sigma Builders, and Greg Dempsey, who's our civil engineer with Innovative. Paul, Andrew, and I back in, several years ago, I don't know, I recall the precise date, but several years ago, we bought the mobile home park on 4th and nominally Sycamore Street, which is comprised of the land area there that you see outlined in red. The area, if you look up at the very top of the drawing where you see kind of those odd shaped circles where there's some gravel pathways, that is the the pathways where the former mobile homes were located and had been located in Zionsville for approximately 50 years or so. We bought the property from a lady named Ann Compton, whose husband developed the mobile home park back in the 50s or 60s. He had an untimely death and never really saw the mobile home park operate, but Ann operated the mobile home park and it became her primary source of income for many, many years. She included the project in several development proposals, each of which failed for one reason or another. And Andrew, Paul, and I approached her to acquire the park basically so that we could control what happened to it. We're all neighbors. If you look at that white structure about halfway down the westernmost red line, that's Andrew's house. I'm approximately, let's see, 1, 2, 3. I'm 4 houses down on Sycamore Street at 5th and Sycamore, and then Paul's just a couple doors down. Kind of fast forward to 2017, and we go to the next slide, Joe. We received approval for a planned unit development to build 23 detached single-family homes on the property. In the community, when we're asked about the status of the project, which we can get to, we are sometimes asked if it's a townhome style development, and they're detached structures, but yeah, I mean, they kind of look like townhomes. They're narrow homes, 2 and 3 stories, that the idea for which was to provide kind of a water view over the really both of the water features that are on the property. That happened in 2017 when we got the rezoning. In 2018, we actually received a plat approval and development plan approval. And Joe, if you want to go next slide. And the central feature for which is that we are to construct a new, what we call the new pond, which is the pond that we're using to excavate to provide the fill for the site, to raise the property out of the flood plain. The new pond provides the compensatory storage. We got a DNR permit for that and have an approved drainage plan through the town of Zionsville, making that all possible. Literally, and I'll kind of fast forward to why we're here this evening, and then I'll turn over the technical part of the discussion to Greg Dempsey. But literally on the eve of pulling our building permits in 2018, we received notification from, I think, first Josh Frost, who's the fire marshal for the town of Zionsville, but he was relaying information that he got from Citizens Energy, essentially telling us that they were not able to provide water at sufficient pressure for fire protection purposes within our development. And that came as a great surprise to us. We had the proposal reviewed by Citizens as part of the plat and development plan review, obviously reviewed by the town engineer, our own engineer, and believed we had adequate water pressure. In fact, the water is right at 4th Street. There's a fire hydrant almost immediately outside our front door. But under current standards anyway, Citizens was not able to provide that water pressure. So that's led to a discussion about how can we provide water for fire protection. And those discussions have centered around, over the last year, the creation of a wet well system, which I'll move to the next slide. This is not the wet well system per se, but it is schematically what we are trying to accomplish. And then Greg can show you the exact engineered drawings. But the idea is that we would draw water from the new pond as a surface water impoundment. That water is drawn into a pump and then feeds 2 fire hydrants, which are the only 2 fire hydrants required by our development within the project. And the wells are under, or excuse me, the hydrants are under constant pressure and can be accessed and serviced by the fire department at any time. Before we launched into actually having Greg write the specific design for the wet well system, we had received what we thought was a written confirmation that the system was acceptable to the town's fire department. We received an email in response to our inquiry seeking confirmation of that fact from Josh Frost, who's the Deputy Chief of Fire Prevention, and the individual who's been extraordinarily helpful to us in trying to navigate this issue. And here's, before I let Greg kind of explain this more in detail as far as functionality, the practical problem that we're encountering is that the subdivision control ordinance contemplates this. It contemplates in Zionsville that you can provide an alternative water supply. And it has a specific performance standard that you need to achieve in order to avail yourself of this provision. And specifically, the performance standard is that the system be adequate to provide 500 gallons per minute at 20 PSI, in our case, with both hydrants functioning simultaneously for 1 hour. And we've provided documentation demonstrating that our system meets that objective performance standard. What the town does not have, though, and we've become acutely aware of that and working through this process, is it does not have design standards for that system. In other words, it has a performance standard based on pressure and volume and a period of time within which the system needs to operate. It does not prescribe what that system needs to look like as far as its design. So unlike, for example, a lift station, a warning siren for weather and emergency situations, which are our design control standards have very detailed provisions as far as who the acceptable manufacturers are, what your operation and maintenance manual must contain, very, very detailed standards and specifications. There is not anything like that for a wet well system servicing an alternative water supply. And so what we've engaged in over the last year has been an iterative process where we have submitted a design and received comments. And that has gone on for the last several months. And I say that not to be critical of anyone, myself included, but just to let you know that we've not been, I think, wasting the town's time or your time and having this on your docket over the last 3 months, but rather have been working through those individual design standards. Since the initial comment letter, I believe we've made a great deal of progress. We still have a couple of outstanding items that were identified for us within the last several days. One of which was providing a letter from our pump manufacturer indicating that the pump we had selected is appropriate for this application with regard to this particular design. We had gone through a great amount of correspondence about the selection of the appropriate pump and assuring that it was fire rated and various other characteristics. We were not aware that we needed to provide a letter from our manufacturer until Thursday afternoon of last week. We're trying to obtain such a letter. The second thing is that we received a request for clarification on how or if the system would have an alarm system associated with it. And what I understand that's primarily directed at is identifying or providing some communication or notification if any part of the system is not working at a particular time, and could provide that signal to someone who could respond to that. And then thirdly, and kind of a corollary to that, is providing a company that we would have a contract with who would be responsible for our periodic maintenance and inspection of the well going forward. And we believe, actually, as of today, have identified a company who indicated they were familiar with these systems and could provide that service. But we do have open items in the staff report I think has noted as much, but I wanted to provide that update to you and provide certainly an opportunity for you all to answer questions. I know there have been individuals in the vicinity of our project who have also expressed an interest in what we're about. And so I thought it'd give them an opportunity to voice any concerns that they might have as well. Before turning it over to Greg for just a few remarks about the specific design, I will say this work has culminated in our team drafting, I think it's approximately 150 pages, maybe a little short of 150 pages, of an operation and maintenance manual that we've crafted specific to this system. We received some initial comments on that O&M manual, primarily relating to the alarm system and the contractor who would be responsible for implementing that manual. But that is really the core work product that we've developed over the last several months. And we would like to complete that process going forward. And Greg, I'll leave it to you if you had a few remarks about the system and its function itself.
Good evening. I'm Greg Dempsey with Innovative Engineering, 3961 Perry Boulevard. We're located in Whitestown. As Matt said, kind of the big picture of the system is there'll be a large pump draws water out of the pond to provide water to the hydrants. In your Plan Commission packets, if you looked at sheet C804, you'd see a detail of what this design really looks like. The system will have a fire rated pump located in a water and weatherproof chamber. That pump will draw water vertically upward from a wet well. That wet well is fed via gravity from a pipe that'll be installed into the pond. Power to the pump is going to come from a new transformer that'll be located near the pump site. There's also going to be a backup diesel generator, obviously for in case of a power outage. There'll be a system control panel there as well. That'll activate the pump immediately as soon as one of the fire hydrants is opened up. So the fire department won't have to take any additional steps that they normally would. They can pull up, connect to the hydrant, and they're ready to go. As Matt had already mentioned, the system will be continually under pressure. There'll be a check valve inside the vault that will help ensure that. Water quality water quantity was obviously a big question. The pipe supplying the wet well is going to be placed 6 feet below the normal water level of the pond. This takes care of several issues. If we have an exceptionally cold winter, there's ice on the pond, we're well below that. If we happen to have a very dry summer, we get some evaporation in the pond, there's still plenty of volume there. The fire flow for the system, as Matt said, is 1,000 gallons per minute for the system as a whole, 500 gallons to each hydrant. But to kind of circle back to the volume, these aren't what we're required to do, but just to give you an idea of what we're looking at. The International Fire Code gives you a process to calculate what kind of water volume you need. They use 1,750 gallons per minute as opposed to 1,000, which is what we're designing to. And they require a 2-hour time period to fight a fire. That equates to 210,000 gallons to fight a fire for 2 hours. And our pond, just the volume above our pipe, is 1.5 million gallons. And that equates to, using their formula, 7.3 hours of firefighting time, which is a little over 3.5 times what the International Fire Code would require. Now to feed the pond, It's going to get water in two different ways. It's going to get the water from this development, but we are also diverting water from the new 36-inch drain pipe that the town has installed as part of their infrastructure improvement to drain that portion of the village. We're diverting that also into this pond to ensure that it has a constant and sustained flow. So it will maintain that water volume. And that's really, without getting way out into the weeds and technical, that's kind of the high level view of how the system works, how it's going to function, and the thought that's gone into that. With that, I'll turn it back over to Matt and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Greg. That's our proposal. We were advised by Wayne DeLong that since this was not an initial part of our proposal, it originally contemplated water through citizens, that we would need to amend our plat and have done so. I will also say that we had worked closely with Josh Frost to get a letter of support from the fire department for the system itself. He has provided us a couple of different drafts of that letter, but has not published it yet because, to my knowledge, he's waiting on the engineering review to be completed as far as our final work product.
All right. So you're done with initial? Okay. All right. At this point in time, does everybody like to comment on this matter from the public?
My name is Josh Spiegel. I reside at 515 South 5th Street. Moved here in Zionsville about a year ago. Absolutely love the community. I'm very close to the location. As soon as we moved in, I've got 4 kids, and when I was taking a shower, one of my kids flushed the toilet and my water went away. So I've been dealing with citizens on a regular basis for over a year. I finally, about a month ago, got my water situated. We are here because citizens could not provide the water. You also, those water lines in town, I come to find out the line that supplied my house was 3/4 inch. I saw it when they dug it up. They replaced every line on our street, 515 5th Street, from the time where Matt's house is all the way back. Based on me fighting citizens on a daily basis, a weekly basis, trying to get them to come out and do flow tests, different things. We have, you mentioned earlier today, that there's not a lot of small local developers. And there's a reason for that. There's a lot of money. These guys over here bought that land over there to control and to make sure that it fits what our community is. It's not some big organization outside of here coming in, trying to put a bunch of apartments in, trying to develop it into something that's not what the village is. It's locals developing it what we would like. They're taking a lot of, effort into trying to do this when really it's, all these plans on this water system and everything, it should be not on them. It should be that the citizens should be able to supply water right there to them that's adequate. And I know from personal design with working with citizens that most of the village does not have adequate. The system that they're going to be providing to those residents, if you do approve that, is going to be better than what most of the village has currently. And that's a fact. Most of those lines are only 4-inch in our town. There's only a few streets that have 8-inch or 6-inch. So why are we not as a town investing in the infrastructure to the taxpayers that have been living there and doing that? Why are we having our developers, our local developers, having to go outside the box because the town and the utility companies can't provide an actual standard that is required by the town? So those, I just witnessed earlier today, Lennar saying, or Pulte saying, getting a rubber stamp saying, we'll make sure that the people are happy next door, make sure they have a fence in their front yard. We'll do whatever we can. That's, one's treated that way. I hope everybody's treated fairly, and I hope you guys give these guys a chance to make it happen, or lean on your commission to be able to make citizens actually supply the whole village with the water that's actually required. But that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else? Joe, is there anybody online? Anybody online? If you'd like to speak, raise your hand. All right, thank you. Since there was no questions, Matt, we'll just go to the staff report.
The petitioner's done a good job of describing the overall outstanding comments. The staff remains needing some resolution to. One of the questions was, of course, that we went from a submersible pump to a vertical turbine pump. That caused additional questions. Staff believes additional exchange is needed between the staff and the petitioner to resolve staff concerns related to the efficacy of the system proposed and the maintenance of the system. Therefore, we are recommending a continuance to the October 18th meeting in order to allow resolution to staff comments.
All right, thank you. At this point in time, I'll open up the members of the commission. Questions, comments?
I guess it is just development 101 is, parcel's only worth sometimes what it can be developed as, and lack of access to utilities is a big determining factor in what a property is worth. And it's not to say that utility companies don't care, but once you start working with them, you'll find that you have to kind of work to their standard. And I'm sure Matt's between the stink and the sweat, because the parcel that if at some point in time something is ever developed to the east, then that would probably solve all of Matt's water problems, as well as help straighten out a lot of stuff on the south side of Zionsville. Comments about overall the utilities, underneath the streets of Zionsville probably being undersized for the demands that really should be placed on them. If we truly had fire protection in all the buildings, like we probably should, and the town of Zionsville is correct. My bigger concern with this is just kind of the long-term maintenance and care and management of it. I have commercial properties. I have one with a backup diesel pump for the fire protection system. And with a commercial property, we get an annual test. That test gets passed along both to my insurance company as well as to the fire marshal. And if we fail and we don't rectify the situation, the fire marshal has the right to come in and condemn my property or close it or request a fire watch be placed on the building. But it's a commercial structure. The problem when you start getting into these kind of systems for residential structures, the fire marshal is not most likely going to come through and tell everybody to move into a hotel. So I would like to see something a little better developed as to what is really going to be the long-term maintenance and management of this. I understand it's currently listed at the HOA will take care of it. That's, this is going to be a system that is going to be installed in a wet situation. Hopefully it never gets used, but when it does need to be used, it needs to work, which makes it extremely difficult because it's going to get viewed as something that's always going to be an afterthought. And what we are asking to support or give a motion to approve is a life safety issue, which is substantially different than whether or not the curve of the road is this tight or how many houses are on that parcel. It's a different issue. And so I support Janice's and the staff's request for continuance. And I would like to see, in addition to the engineering details, that a little fuller management plan for this thing going forward is out there.
Yeah, the HOA didn't work very well for those condominiums in Florida.
So I don't have any issue with what Mr. Jones said relative to wanting to make sure that you meet the staff's requirements. I am supportive of this system. I've seen it used in other commercial projects. I've had rural hospitals that have implemented similar systems. So I think the viability of the system is there. I think you guys have done a lot of research, and I appreciate the level of detail that you went into. So while I do think that there is a continuance that needs to be had in order to satisfy staff's comments, just on the record, I'm in support of what you guys have done and appreciate the effort put in. And I would also note that the engineering calculations were very helpful, just to state that we're not meeting the bare minimum. In fact, we're not only meeting the bare minimum relative to the International Fire Code, we're exceeding that by 3x, which is 5 or 6x of what Zionsville's asked for. So that is important to show the relative nature of the scope of what you're proposing. So thank you.
Anybody else? So Matt, I guess you'll continue to work with the town while we
Yes.
go this direction. All right.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Appreciate
All
the
right.
comments too, very much.
All right. So is there a motion to continue this matter to October 18th?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Janice?
Mr. Franz,
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mrs. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Fedor,
Aye.
Mrs. Madrick,
Aye.
We heard her. 7-0. Thanks, Matt. We'll see you next month. Next on the docket is 2021-22 DP Nicholson Orthodontics, 95 East Oak Street. Petition for development plan approval of a plus or minus 4,000 square foot building addition to existing structure in the Village Business District, BBD. Petitioner present.
My name is Paul Kite with Strongbox Development, offices at 65 East Cedar, representing Nicholson Orthodontics in regards to the proposed 4,000 square foot expansion of the existing property and business at southwest corner of Elm and Oak. I believe in your packets, we've got the renderings and site plans and so forth. And with that, I'll let staff comment.
All right. Is there anybody in the public or public like to comment on this matter? Before we get to that, did you notice with first class mail?
Registered mail.
Registered mail? Okay, thank you. No public comment, Janice, staff report, or Roger?
Thank you. Mr. Kite gave a nice summary of the proposed project. One thing I would like to add to this is that they've taken the project before the Zionsville Architectural Review Committee and have received comments from them and incorporated a majority of those comments. I want to compliment them on that. They're scheduled to go back before the ZARC next Tuesday, a week from tomorrow, for final review. But again, most of the recommendations from the ZARC, all the significant ones, have been incorporated into the design. Staff is supportive of the proposed development plan. Be glad to answer any questions you might have at this time.
All right, thank you.
One thing I probably should have mentioned is we did receive a variance from the BZA for our off-street parking. We have an agreement for those 9 spaces. I believe that's before the town, or should be before the town, if it isn't already, for review.
That is correct.
All right, okay, thank you. Any questions, comments on this one?
The only thing I noticed was that it looks like your refuse recycling tote area is screened on generally the east and west, but not the south. Is there any plan to screen that across the south as well? Along that alley access?
We could. I think if that was important, that we could do that. Might take some sort of rolling door or something like that to make that work. It's
Is that an alley technically to the south? Is that what that is?
correct. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm guessing there are no requirements then to screen refuse from an alley
I
side.
think in the village, you're supposed to be seeing that all. I'm not sure.
Do we know what the requirement is for screening refuse collection?
Sorry, I could not hear you.
What are the requirements to screen refuse collection in the village area? Does it have to be screened on all sides? Because right now it's only screened on two sides.
I will need to look into that.
Mr. Lake, it's a 36 cubic foot dumpster trashing. It needs to be screened. Oftentimes you see totes. Totes do not qualify to be screened. We ran into this with a couple different projects, but certainly if you have a roll-off dumpster, small, those need to be screened.
Okay, thank you.
Do we know what the last concerns from the Zionsville Architectural Review Committee are?
There are really no concerns. It's just that they have not seen the final design, which has incorporated some of their comments. Some of the more significant comments that they brought forward at the last meeting dealt with the dimensions of the lap siding on different sections of the building. And those requests have been addressed as the ZARC requested. So again, going before the ZARC next Tuesday, I don't know of any outstanding major issues that the ZARC, that would be holding up the ZARC's approval.
So it looks like they had you take some areas with a 4-inch lap to kind of harken back to what's on the current house, and then 8-inch lap on the larger building to maybe help with the scale.
Correct. Some of the colors were to be refined. We've refined some of the colors. Hard to see on those drawings. But
Yeah. I'll say third time's a charm, second time not so much though. So thanks for the redesign.
thank you.
Anybody else? Would somebody like to make a motion on this matter?
Sure. I move that docket number 2021-22-DP development plan approval for a 4,000 square foot plus or minus building addition to an existing structure in the Village Business District be approved based on the findings of fact in the staff report and staff recommendations, submitted findings of fact, and subject to resolution of outstanding review items identified by the engineering review memo and exhibit 5 of the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Janice, will you please take roll?
Mr. Franz,
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Ms. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Fedor,
Aye.
Mrs. Madrick,
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0. You get the prize for the quickest one of the night.
I don't get paid to stand here. Good night, and thanks for your fortitude.
Mr. Franz, just want to bring up quickly as you close in on 10 o'clock, you do have a couple matters. Okay.
Yep. So we probably should go ahead and make a motion that we're going to suspend the rules and allow potential to start after petition to start after 10 o'clock tonight. Is there a motion to do so?
So
Is there a second?
second.
We'll dispense with the roll call. All in favor, signify by aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, on to new business. Sunbeam Development Corporation, Hub 2, Phase 2, Building 3, Building 4. So 2021-47 CA, 4155 South, 300 East, and 4255 South, 300 East. Petition for commitment amendment to modify commitments associated with Plan Commission approval of docket number 2019-52Z, recorded in the Office of the Recorder of Boone County, Indiana, as an instrument number 200013512. 2021-42 PP, same address. Petition for primary plat approval to establish 2 lots in the rural I-1 industrial zoning district. 2021-43 DP, same address. Petition for development plan approval to allow for the construction of a 385,560 plus or minus square foot industrial warehousing and distribution building in the rural I-1 light industrial zoning district. 2021-44 DP, same address. Petition for development plan approval to allow for construction of a 702,000 square foot plus or minus industrial warehousing and distribution building in the rural I-1 light industry zoning district. Is the petitioner present?
Good evening. My name is Brian Sheward. I'm the civil engineer record on the project. My company is Kinley Horn and Associates. Our offices are 250 East 96th Street, Suite 580 in Indianapolis. I appreciate the suspension of the rules to allow us to do this tonight, genuinely. Thank you for that. So I've got a short presentation, and I appreciate Janice and the Plan Commission. This is a short presentation that walks through, I would say, the high level of all four of the petitions. I think that would probably make the most sense. And then I think they all kind of bleed together in many ways. So next slide, please. So to give you a sense of location, I trust that you probably know where this is at, but the site is a north-south rectangle. It's on the southeast corner of County Road 400 South and County Road 300 East. This is just west of what's been referred to as the hub I-65 Phase 1, which you can see Building 2 there highlighted just to the southeast of this site. The site has quite a few different authorities having jurisdiction. Saratoga, the subdivision that I'm sure some residents are here tonight, is just to the east, and you can see that's noted on the page there. County Road 400 South to the north is governed by the city of Lebanon, and then County Road 300 East on the west side of the site is Boone County Highway Department. There's a Duke Energy electrical easement that runs through this property about 3/4 of the way down in an east-west direction. That's a 150-foot wide easement with rules about what we can do in that. And then drainage from this site travels in a south to northeast direction, comes out of the corner of the property and travels through the Nolan legal drain tile up towards I-65 across Clark's property to the north under Indianapolis Road, and eventually through the Weber Concrete parcel on the way up to the roadside ditch. On the west side of I-65, just this morning, we went to the Drainage Board in Boone County and received approval for reconstruction of that legal drain, which is quite a distance from the northeast corner of this property all the way up. It briefly crosses into Saratoga and then runs, like I said, up to I-65. And we were approved this morning at that Drainage Board meeting, which would allow us to reconstruct that across the length. And you'll see a picture of that upcoming. Next slide. So the four petitions that we have before you tonight, there's a commitment amendment. I'll explain why we're doing that. There's a primary plat to create two parcels. There's two existing parcels today, and there'll be two proposed. It's just we're reconfiguring them into two lots for two different buildings. And then there's two buildings, which we're referring to as Building 3 and Building 4, both cross-dock industrial speculative warehouses. I should have mentioned Mr. Ken Kern and Jamie Chrisman are here from Sunbeam Development Corporation. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions that I can't answer, but Sunbeam is a long-term holder of properties so that they don't develop these and then turn around and anticipate selling them. They own Building 1 and 2 today, and they intend to hold these two buildings as well into the future. Next slide. This is an overall site plan. And what you'll notice in the intent of me showing this is that this is very similar to what the site plan within the recorded zoning commitments that was commitments when the property was rezoned back last year. And I have a slide of that coming up, but you'll see that there are significant landscaping and berming elements around this site, namely at the top of the page, which is the east side. There's a 75-foot wide, 12-foot tall landscaped berm with a 6-foot cedar fence on top that runs along the interface with Saratoga. And then as you move west from Saratoga over that berm, there's a proposed wet detention basin. As you keep moving west or down the page, there's a 4-foot berm that's landscaped, then trailer parking, then you come into the building area with the truck maneuvering area and the docks. Wrapping around the north side of the site adjacent to County Road 400 South, there's a 40-foot type H landscape buffer with a 4-foot mound that's there pointed out on the north, which wraps around the west side of the site. It runs the entire length down County Road 300 East, except for one gap, which I'll explain why. So next slide. So the gap, and this is a color markup of the primary plat. The faint yellow that you can see separating the two buildings, which runs along the drive to access the site, that's the 150-foot Duke transmission easement. Duke will not allow you to raise grade within that easement, and they will not allow trees to be planted in that easement. So as you'll notice along the bottom of that page, that location, and I've got to zoom in, is the gap in the 4-foot berm along 300. Two things came up during TAC review. One, there's one point of ingress egress to this property. That's because there was a commitment that there would be no curb cuts to 300 and 400. And because of that, and also because of the fact that we can't have that berm continue through that Duke easement and raise grade, that was a logical location for the Zionsville Fire Department to ask for an emergency access drive, which would be gated with a Knox padlock, not to be opened by the public, not to be accessed by the public, hopefully never accessed ever, but that is technically a curb cut. So if you go to the next slide, as you know, these were I'll get to this, but these were I'll say simplified, abridged commitments. There were 12 of them made at the rezone. Bear with me as I didn't want to put too much text up there, but you'll see that these are truncated versions. We were handed these. We have abided by all of these. I won't walk you through every single one. We'd be happy to. But if you go to the next slide, there are two that I've highlighted in red. One is number 9. So we are abiding by the buffer yard requirements, except for the gap where the Duke easement is along 300. And then 12, that we should not have any vehicular access off County Road 400 South or County Road 300 East. We feel that we're abiding by the spirit of that, but because of the emergency access drive, it's gated and technically requires a commitment. If you go to the next slide. This is the site plan that was put forward by Van Trust at the time that the property was rezoned last year. American Structure Point was a civil engineer for Van Trust. What I wanted to point out here is that at first glance, it's very similar to what we're proposing. Buildings are the same orientation, same cross-stack buildings. In fact, what we're proposing results in less square footage than what this site plan actually shows. Our northern building, which is on the left-hand side, we're proposing 702,000 square feet. This is about 78,000 square feet more than that. And then the building to the south says 399, that was previously provided. What we're proposing is 385 plus or minus. So the traffic study that was prepared for the rezone, we worked with Beam, Longus, and Neff, I almost said Butler, Fairman, Seifert, but BLN and Janice can concur that they've agreed that the plan that we're putting forward falls within the previous study that was prepared by the previous consultant. Next slide. This is just a zoom in along County Road 300 East, along that location where you can see the break in the dark green 4-foot mound that's indicated with the red line. You'll also notice behind that blue hatch, the blue hatch represents that electrical easement that I mentioned. We found that was a logical location for that emergency access drive. I take advantage of the fact that the berm can't be there. Next slide. So with this project and working with staff, there were a few additional proposed commitments that we're happy to make, and certainly would work with staff and the Planning Commission on this. We had learned after the initial submittal that there was a verbal commitment that evergreens planted on the Saratoga 12-foot berm would be planted at 8 foot tall. We were unaware of that at the time because it wasn't part of the written commitments at the time of the rezone. But I think there was verbal testimony at some point in time that Van Trust had committed to that. So we're happy to make that commitment. That's number 13. Number 14, this is specific to kind of the timing of when this berm, we had worked with some residents and there was a concern that the berm may not be built until when construction is almost done. And they want to have the opportunity to have that screen along Saratoga as soon as possible. So this basically just states that, and this would have been the intent for the contractor at the beginning of this project anyway, because the fact of the matter is they need to scrape the topsoil from the site. They need somewhere to put that topsoil. They were going to put that in the 12-foot berm. Then they're going to excavate out that wet detention pond and use the dirt that comes from that clay material below topsoil to build the pad for building 3, I think specifically, and then building 4 as well. So this is just a commitment to build that berm and install the 6-foot fence at the very beginning of the project. They plan to start construction within the next few months. Because of that, it's not a great time to plant landscaping going into the winter. So there's the second sentence to that says the proposed landscaping on the 12-foot berm will be installed no later than June 1st of 22. So we tried to put some teeth and some specific date, not delay it until the very end of the project. Then commitment number 15, just a commitment that we would abide by all the recorded commitments within that instrument number, as well as item 13. So must be completed / adhered to in order to obtain a certificate of occupancy for either building 3 or building 4. So just again, a measure to ensure that these things are carried forward and not waited until the very end. It could become a sticking point at the end of the project. Next slide. High level, because it was approved this morning, but just so everyone, including the audience, knows, our site is in yellow. What's outlined in red is the contributing watershed to the Nolan legal drain tile, which runs as that blue line is the length of that tile, which will be reconstructed as a part of this project, both through the property in yellow as well as reconstructed offsite up to I-65. When it routes through our property, it'll be intercepted along County Road 300 East along the west side, picked up and rerouted to the north, and then routed east along the north property line, cross briefly into, which it does today, but into Saratoga, and then cross 400 and then be reconstructed across the length, which is Gene Clark's property under Indianapolis Road through Weber Concrete, and eventually Daylight as it does today. Next slide. One item we've been working with Mr. Craig Fiscari, who's here this evening. We'd worked over the last few weeks back and forth with both Mr. Tiscari and the Boone County surveyor and Sunbeam, my client, on how to handle the existing legal drain tile that crosses into his property today on the northwest corner of the Saratoga neighborhood. Without going into too much detail, I'd be happy to, but the red hatch that you see here is an existing 150-foot legal drain easement that crosses his property. What's shown in green was what was approved this morning, as well as the black lines behind for the legal drain reconstruction, which is a 30-inch proposed storm pipe that would run along County Road 400 South. And then the green hatch is what the proposed, what they call an urban regulated drainage easement or an improved drainage easement, 20 foot of which would reside on his property. It's really difficult to show. On the north-south run, 30 foot along in an east-west direction along the south side of 400 South. Important item to note is they overlap each other. What you see in blue around the outside is an existing 20-foot drainage and utility easement that borders the entire perimeter of the Saratoga neighborhood. What we're proposing in green overlaps both blue and red. Mr. Tiscari could petition the drainage board in the future if he would like to have the red relic piece there vacated, and he'd have to put a petition forward to the drainage board, but I'll let him speak to that. And as a part of this, the improvements, there are a few trees in the corner of his property that currently exist within the 20-foot drainage and utility easement that will likely be disturbed with the project. Sunbeam's made a commitment to relocate those trees for Mr. Tiscari. They're agreeable to that, plant it where he would like on his property, as well as proposing 5 species of his choice that's circled there in red, mainly in an area to try to, if you go south from there, just to the west, there's a 12-foot berm with a 6-foot fence. But because of drainage reasons, we have to stop the berm before we get to 400. This is a gap filler in between. So that's what my client's been willing to commit to him. Next slide, please. These are just architectural elevations giving a sense of the color and the palette of what the architectural or the buildings will be. Both building 3 and building 4, which is on the next slide, are very similar with this earth tone color. You can go to the next slide. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. At this point in time, does anybody like to comment on this matter from the public? Please state your name and address.
My name's Dan Davis, live at 3180 East, 400 South in Lebanon. And matter of fact, we're on the southern border of Lebanon. If we cross the road, we're in Zionsville. Go half mile east, we're in Whitestown. My wife and I are a retired couple. We've lived in the same house for 35 years. And we're very concerned about the warehouse Zionsville's building on the field in front of our house. We attended a meeting with the previous company, Van Trust, that was going to build the warehouse. And in that meeting, we had an oral agreement with Ralph Webster of Van Trust that was going to build the warehouse at the time. And in that meeting, we had, he said in that, it was going to be constructed on 400 South to limit the noise of the warehouse, the berm was, and the construction of it. The agreement was that it would be an 8-foot berm with trees planted on it. In the Zionsville Plan Commission meeting in February 2020, Mr. Price said, "We are fully prepared to include a buffering and screening package on the north side of that property. We contemplate having a 40-foot buffer and can include a berm and landscaping as well. And the same commitments as far as the lighting and signage could apply on that side of the building as well. I would add that one of the benefits of the layout for the property owners on the north side of 400 is that there are no loading docks contemplated on that side of the development. So it's consistent with other projects that have been approved in Zionsville with regard to instances where homes were immediately across the street from an existing county road. What's been done in those instances, and I'm speaking of the Becknell project, for example, and what's been done in those instances is that there have been buffering and screening done between those homes and the newly approved structure, and they have limited the layout so that there were no loading docks on that side of the property. And we are committed to following that procedure as well. Now, instead of Van Trust, Sunbeam has taken on the project. We've had no contact with them, and we don't know if the berm agreement was passed on to them. The drawing of the project shows a 4-foot berm. It would allow car and truck lights to shine directly in our home. And what makes us really upset is the Saratoga subdivision is getting a 12-foot berm with a 4-foot fence on it, or 6-foot fence on it. My neighbors and I are also worried about the truck traffic that might occur on our road. I know that there have been assurances they would not use our road, but we've already had instances of trucks coming down our road and turning around in our driveways because they missed the entrance they were supposed to use. We're also concerned about our property values dropping. Who wants to buy a house that's got a mega warehouse towering in front of it? I attended a neighborhood meeting the other night, and everyone had the same concerns. A resident on 300 East that has a home to the west of the warehouse that Sunbeam has constructed said he was told it would be an 8-foot berm too. But the backup alarms, but the berm was so short that he can see people going in and out of the doors, and the constant beeping of backup alarms on the construction equipment was overwhelming. It's sure to get worse when trucks with backup alarms start coming in and out. I know that Zionsville could care less about our neighborhood. They've already shown their disregard for the area by letting the 80-acre field grow up in 6 to 8-foot weeds, and the weeds are a fire hazard to the area. My wife and I and one of our neighbors are Zionsville alumni. They've already shown, but we are ashamed to mention that to our other neighbors because of the feelings about Zionsville out there right now. A berm that is at least 8 foot tall might alleviate those feelings a bit. You've heard the term good fences make good neighbors. In this case, a high berm can make less angry neighbors. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else?
Kathy Lee, 2850 East, 400 South, Lebanon. We're neighbors down the road from the Davises. Basically, we've accepted that Perry Township got the warehouses, so that's a done deal. What we are upset with is when we looking at we've been to every meeting here. And after the February meeting, about 8 of the neighbors along 400 asked Mr. Price if we could have a meeting, and there was a representative from Van Trust as well. And we met at the local McDonald's there by the Loves. And I don't know where Mr. Price went because I would love to ask him, but he told us in that meeting that when we got down to the very end of the line, as far as all the landscaping, that we could reconvene and we would discuss a taller berm on that 400 South. So now Mr. Price is not in here now. So, and now we have Sunbeam, which, I understand, sells or whatever, but what's upsetting is, we didn't balk it a lot. We're going along with it. And, my husband and I have lived out there for 36 years and looked at fields. Now we're going to look at the warehouse, but the least you can do, I think, Sunbeam, is to continue what you're doing already for Saratoga and do something around that 400. The Davises are the only house that have a 2-story house, and they are going to be looking right over that beam. And so we did get together, and several of us wrote letters. I'm assuming you guys got those, so I'm not going to reread that. But I'm just saying, I think somebody needs to make it right as far as we trusted the other company, and now they're gone. Lawyer's gone. And so now we're asking you, because we have stared at 7 to 8 foot weeds all summer long. We farm. One of our fields is catty corner to the field. And us, with my husband farming, and the adjacent farmer across the street, all these weed seeds are growing now and blowing in the air. And we kind of have a sour taste right now. And like Dan said, Mr. Davis, maybe you can make it right if you work with us on this. Most of us have lived there years and years and years. So, this is upsetting. I know people can do whatever they want with their land, but we just would appreciate consideration on this 4-foot berm that is now along 400. We understand the additions for the fire department, et cetera, on 300. I think we're fine with that. That's a good thing. But would we consider the berm being a little bigger? And I hope somebody listens.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Step forward.
Yeah, Ben Zobrist, 3030 East, 400 South. I just want to reiterate what my neighbors have said here. I was in some of the meetings with Mr. Price, and when we were considering taller screening, higher berms, fences, and of that nature, and I guess we still would like to see that considered. A 4-foot berm may meet what their requirements are, but as we're being directly across the road from it, we've seen what Saratoga has been given. They're surrounded by it. I feel bad for them because they've lived it for many years right behind them. They've got a tall mound, a fence separated by a detention pond. We have a 40-foot half right of way, 20-foot setback, and then the 40-foot landscape portion of that. So I think we would like to see some sort of additional berm fence in there to screen that off as close as that's going to be to our homes directly across on 400 South. So I just want to reiterate We know, we've heard that we know the traffic comes in off 267 and that's the only access. And we believe that. But also like to some commitment that the construction traffic uses that access as well and not use 400 South or 300 East as access in and out during the construction of this warehouse and building areas. And this is particularly number 4 that's directly across on 400 South. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, my name is Craig Trascari, 3270 Paddock Road. I understand that everybody's pretty tired now after what went on. So I'm going to start off by saying I'd like to have a continuance on building 4 requirements. There is no remonstration that I know of for building 3 or the access road, but I would request that you do provide consider a continuance on the building 4. That being said, you've heard from some of the individuals. I was here initially when you proposed the rezoning of that area. I've heard from different individuals that we don't have homes that are, large custom homes with large acreage and water wells and septic systems, but you did at Saratoga. Saratoga has over 20 some odd homes in that area, close to 40 homes. In the last 3 years, we just surrounded it with 2 million square feet of warehousing. And that happened the last 3 or 4 years. And in that neighborhood, in that area has had continuous development for the last 4 years. And people are seriously on their last nerve when it comes to what's going on in that area for the constructions. But one of the other considerations is that we already know from phase 1, for example, that the sound of the beeping in the area is excessive. Even with a 12-foot berm and a fence, that does not stop the noise that is coming from those buildings at the least. Maybe in 10 years, after those trees are fully developed, that might provide some blockage. But right now with the trees that are planted on that berm, even if we call it robust, if you go there and take a look at it, you'll see it is not robust in order to stop the noise and other things from occurring. The plan that was talked about today has parking of trailers behind Saratoga. Now we talk about this 12-foot berm and fence. Okay, that's 75 feet. And then you might have another 100 feet of area of separation of water, which sound travels over water very quickly, as we noted. And as well as the wind that blows from north to south. So it's going to go over the entire community for any of that noise. They're proposing to have 65 trailer parking areas in that area, 65 parking trailer areas of people backing up constantly in that area right behind that Saratoga area. And what I would propose that Sunbeam look at as we go through this continuance and give them some time to actually consider this is that you don't build that in for the next 7 or 8 years. Allow the trees, the other things to grow in that area to provide the proper blockage, and then put the change order, go ahead and increase the size of those parking areas. And that way it would phase in based off of what we're seeing now in phase 1, which is an absolute nightmare for the community on that side. Additionally, when you talk about Matt Price and the discussion here, Matt Price also told us about the trees and 8-foot trees and those other things. In phase 1, we had that problem. I had to go back and show him where it was in public hearing, where those trees in the plant, and show them what we were received for that agreement. For some reason, it didn't get into that commitment letter, but it was public. It was in public hearing. The incident happened the same here. Okay, where Mr. Price mentioned that it would be exactly the same for Saratoga as far as the trees, as far as the berm, as far as whatever on there, but it didn't get into that commitment letter. And I was here when Mr. Price engaged the people on 400. I was here when he set up an appointment with them. And I was not at the appointment that people at 400 were made, but it was my understanding that they were going to be getting an 8-foot berm. But I was not there at that particular meeting that they went through, but I believe that it was, given some of the things that occurred in the recent past. As far as my land goes and the commitments that they made, as far as, replanting trees, because you saw on Saratoga, that's my property, and that they're going to provide, five trees on there and move some of the trees that are there. Well, they're starting the project November, December. They're going to have to move those trees in those areas. So they're going to replant them in November, December, where when the spring hits, I'm just going to have a bunch of dead trees that I'm going to have to go ahead and dispose of on my property. And I've asked Sunbeam to provide me a commitment of that area of what they're going to do on my property, which they told you as a board what they're going to do, but it's not binding in any way that I know of, because it's private property that they're putting those things on. And so again, I asked Sunbeam to provide me a commitment as a landowner for that area. The other part is, finally, because I know we're getting late, is the continuance is not going to be an issue for 2 weeks or 3 weeks as we sort out these other I think two main issues: the berm size and the parking of those trailers against that Saratoga area, because it does not work. I mean, it really does not work with blocking that you have in that area. Is that there's a 20-day waiting period, even after they got the approval from the county, for anybody to do legal review. So there's a 20-day portion of time that they have to have before the legal review time period is completed, and the recommendation or what they decided at that board would go through. So as far as the timing is concerned, it won't shift them off on their scheduling, because I would assume they're going to wait that 20-day period anyway to see if somebody places a legal review in. Any questions?
No, thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to make a comment? Sure, come forward, please.
I am Mark Lee at 2050 East 400 South. I was here when Matt Price talked about the berm. When I was at the meeting, when we met with him, and he said that we would talk about it later toward the end. And they did agree that they'd make an 8-foot berm. That wouldn't be a problem for them. Another issue we have is, what does Zionsville have to ensure the traffic on 400 and 300? I don't see a Zionsville patrol car out there ever. See Whitestown, but I don't see Zionsville. And also, like my wife previously said, we've got 115 acres catty corner from them, and we've looked at 8-foot tall weeds all summer. And that's pitiful. And I'd ask the commission to continue their request until they can get control of their property, because right now they don't.
All right, thank you very much. Is there anybody else who'd like to comment on this? Would you like to respond to any of this?
Mr. Franz, anybody who's online?
Oh, sir. Oh, Joe, is there anybody online who would like to comment? If you would, please raise your hand. Nope. Okay.
I tried to take notes as each person was speaking. I think from the developer's perspective, and Ken can certainly speak for himself, but the arrangement with Van Trust owning the property and working through things prior, and Sunbeam now owning the property, we were handed commitments that we had followed those commitments. the engineering behind and what you have in your submittals in front of you, we followed the berming requirements as they were stated and recorded. If there were other discussions that occurred between different parties that aren't here, I don't know if I can necessarily speak to that, but we followed what's listed on that site plan. If you look at that site plan compared to what our site plan proposed is, it's very clear on a 40-foot buffer, 4-foot berm, landscaping. I know there's some items that we've resubmitted just this past week. I believe we addressed the landscaping comments that were provided by staff up to this point. So I guess I would leave that to that statement there. One comment that was made about construction traffic, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't be comfortable making a commitment that no construction traffic would come on 400 and 300 to the site. Yeah, there's no intention for that at all. I thought it would be helpful to note that the distance between Saratoga to the trailers that were referenced by Mr. Tiscari, approximately 350 to 400 feet between the property line and those trailer spots. So it's over a football field of distance with a 12-foot berm and a 6-foot fence. I think that helps with the sense of scale on what that distance is. If you have anything else.
Nothing in particular, unless there's a specific question. No, like I will just add.
Please name and address, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ken Kern with Sunbeam Development, Vice President. Yeah, other than the fact that every commitment that had been made by Van Trust, we follow, by rule, but every word that we do to make sure that we met everything that had been pledged before in a formal manner, and so we feel like we have done what was presented to us as what was needed to be done to do our development.
Okay.
I'm sorry, what was that? What are you saying?
Let's say, hold on. He said he's they're fulfilling the commitments as recorded. So with that, I mean, if somebody, this will be the final, you get a chance to rebuttal on this one. But
I just wanted to, because they said it's 350 feet, making that sound like it's a lot of distance. But on phase one, it's actually farther. And in phase one on that side from Saratoga, there is no trailer parking. Okay, that's green space because you have the power lines. They're not allowed to build underneath that. And so there's added green space. So to say that it's 350 feet away, we already know that's not far enough.
all right, thanks. All right, with that, I will close the hearing and public comment, and we'll go to staff report.
Staff wants to offer that I did spend a little bit of time reviewing the records from previous, especially the February meeting, and note that although it was potentially inferred that berms of a different nature than 4 foot might be included, in fact, that was not the case. And the petitioner has followed the commitments and supplied us with commitment amendments that staff believes are appropriate and we are in support of. Just to be very brief, commitment number 9 to allow for compliance to the Duke utility easement. Commitment number 12 to allow for the emergency access drive that's been required. We're also supportive of the commitments 13, 14, and 15, with stipulation that this finalized document come back and that staff, council, and plan commission have the opportunity to review the commitments at the October 18th meeting. With that, I would also offer that staff is requesting continuance of all 4 petitions. We are in receipt of a response letter from the petitioner that fairly well provides us the information that's needed. However, at this point in time, and with the inclusion of the drainage board's approval, staff is going to be needing to see the actual plans to review and approve before we're comfortable with full support. With that, I'll answer any questions.
All right, thanks. Anybody?
Just want to make sure to understand the question. So during the February hearing, there was discussion about additional berms,
There was discussion about burns along 400.
but we didn't really get them
And
made into
it's kind of
commitments.
a circular conversation. And so I understand where the confusion might be, but nothing was landed.
We didn't revise the commitments as part of our hearings. So it's kind of on us.
I beg your pardon?
It's on us. We didn't revise the
No.
commitments
No.
that we
they
made.
are-
Anybody else? Comments?
Has this property not been mowed all summer? Is it really 6-8? I haven't been out there. You got a chance to drive back by it, but has it not been mowed all summer?
Jamie Chrisman, 11800 exit 5 Parkway. We were notified by Zionsville about some mowing, about some requirements related to that field, and we did begin mowing that field. Obviously, a field of that size, you can imagine it takes time to get that machinery together and the process started, but it has started. I believe we started starting with the Saratoga side of the property, because we knew that was closest to their property. So we started mowing the land, the vacant land closest to their property, but we haven't completed all of the mowing, no.
Okay.
But we did start.
By the time this next month, it will be mowed?
Yes, yes.
There was no maintenance throughout the course of the summer.
It was farmland, no. There was no
It
maintenance.
wasn't farmland. It wasn't farmland.
Please,
for a
please,
year.
please. We're dressing it up here.
It hasn't been farmed for a year. I mean, it's been, since it's been exchanged hands with the previous owners.
Correct. We purchased
My
it in
question is, Has it
January.
been maintained and mowed this summer? You said.
It hasn't been mowed this summer. I said we started mowing the property and we
Wonderful.
started on the Saratoga side, yes.
Okay. So by next month, it'll all be mowed? Okay.
Any other questions, comments?
Not this time.
All right, so then we have a request for continuance of the four matters. Is there a motion to continue these to the October 18th meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Oh, no. Janice?
Mr. Franz,
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski.
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mrs. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Fedor,
Aye.
Ms. Madrick.
Aye.
That's a carry 7-0. We'll see you next month. Thank you. Docket number 2021-45 BP Holiday Farms Clubhouse, 3950 Club Ridge Estates, petition for development plan approval to allow for construction of a clubhouse facility in the rural PUD planned unit development Zionsville districts. Assuming you're online.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I hope you're watching the football game while you're waiting for this.
I absolutely was. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't. Good evening, members of the Plan Commission. Phil Sundling here with the Hankey Development Group. As always, I really appreciate your guys' time and certainly your consideration this evening. I typically try to provide you guys with an update on the development as a whole, and I'd be happy to this evening, but I know it's been a long agenda for you, so I'll try to stay a little more brief. Before you tonight is our Holiday Farms Clubhouse, which is a 70,000 square foot facility that not only serves our golf course, but also our community as a whole. The clubhouse includes our golf pro shop, golf locker rooms, a golf simulator lounge where members can come indoors and hit golf balls. They can test and get fitted for new clubs, and even just hang out with friends and family and have a good time playing golf while staying out of the weather. The clubhouse also includes a grab and go style cafe where golfers can grab a quick bite during the turn, or a family can swing in and snag a quick meal, or where kids can hang out after school and do their homework. It also includes an upscale steakhouse restaurant and full bar, which provides a more formal dining experience. And it also includes a full-size banquet room, which is used to host wedding receptions and other corporate events. The clubhouse has an entire athletic and recreation wing, which includes a full court basketball gymnasium that can alternatively be used for volleyball and other indoor athletic events. The athletic wing also has a spinning studio, a multi-purpose and dance studio, and a full circuit training and free weight facility. It also includes a 4-lane bowling alley, which probably seems a little out of place, but it is such a popular amenity at our Chatham Hills development in Westfield. The bowling alley there is incredibly popular for birthday parties, young and old, and just a great way to have fun with friends and family throughout the entire year. The clubhouse will also include indoor and outdoor pools, which will be absolutely stunning, as you'll see here shortly in a quick video. In terms of the quality we're planning for the clubhouse, it'll essentially match the Williamsburg architectural style of our gatehouse at the main entrance. I'm sure most of you have seen. We're planning for heavy brick masonry and nothing obviously but high quality materials that you've seen throughout Holiday Farms. And if possible, I'd like to share screen, and I'm going to show you a quick video. Let's see if I can pull this up. It's real brief. And if the video doesn't work, I've got photos. Can you guys see the clubhouse photo there?
There it is.
Beautiful.
Is it running through the video now?
Yes.
Yeah. That's essentially the front facade of the clubhouse. As you can see, lots of masonry, lots of brick. This is just another shot from a little further south. That right side there, that's mainly the athletic wing, the gym, the spinning studio. That's the bowling alley there in the front. It's kind of rotating toward the east. There on the right side this is the pool area, indoor. There's the outdoor pool, obviously. To the left there in the building is the locker rooms. You see the covered kind of cabana area. This is the outdoor pool. Very similar in size to Chatham Hills and Westfield. I don't know if any of you guys have been there, but there are garage doors there on the building through the cabana that roll up during inclement weather. Folks can come inside and swim indoors as well. This is the rear of the building, the north side of the building. A lot of outdoor living there, a bunch of fire pits. It's going to be Chatham Hills and Westfield is a very popular area. And that's just another shot from the south. We're essentially on hole 18 there. And that's pretty much it. I'd be happy at this time to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thanks. Is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment on this matter? Online? Janice? Roger?
Thank you. Mr. Sunling did a good job on the overview of the project. Things I would like to add to that. I don't believe you mentioned that this proposal also includes the tennis courts and pickleball courts that would be adjacent to the clubhouse area. One unique aspect of the analysis of this project is that with the clubhouse being within the Holiday Farms PUD, we defer to the PUD for the development standards and permitted uses rather than the Zionsville zoning ordinance. Additionally, much of the final approval for the project through the approval of the PUD has been deferred to the architectural review body of Holiday Farms. So again, a lot of the development standards are stated within the PUD, and then the approval of those go to the developer themselves. Staff is supportive of the requested development plan. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
All right, thank you. At this point in time, does anybody from the planning commission have any comments, questions?
Oh, so they don't need a variance. It's an accessory structure. It's 70,000 square feet larger than the average house. So it's not like a normal outbuilding, right?
You always want to get the BZA involved.
Make a motion?
I think so.
I'll move that petition 2021-45-DP development plan petition to provide for the development of a 2.5 story, 78,000 square foot clubhouse in the rural plan unit development district for Holiday Farms be approved as presented with the conditions as noted in the staff report and exhibit 5 and based upon the findings of fact.
Second.
We're all gonna second.
Any further discussion? Janice, would you please take roll?
Mr. France,
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mrs. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Fedor,
Aye.
Ms. Madrick,
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Are you now done with the plan commission? Is this the last one?
We've got one more section for you.
Okay, all right.
Oh, you
We'll see you then.
Thank
Thanks
you,
a lot.
guys. Have a great night.
On to other matters.
Yeah.
Conducting an electronic meeting policy. I think we all got copies of that.
Yes.
And is this the point in time we would vote to adopt that? All right. Did anyone have any comments on it?
I move we adopt it.
Second.
All right.
As resolution number 1.
Oh.
It needs a resolution number.
Okay.
And we don't have any other ones, do we? We have the same thing at
Tonight.
BZA.
Okay.
Not this year.
Resolution number 1. All right. Sounds good.
Or 2021-01.
001. All right. Any further discussion? Janice, would you please take roll?
Mr. France,
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mrs. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Fedor,
Aye.
Mrs. Madrick,
Aye.
All right, that carries 7-0. Next on the docket is the zoning charrettes.
Certainly very briefly, just checking with our team, actually it's probably first time ever. We've had dual meetings going on at the exact same time out in Perry Township for the first night of the zoning charrettes. So our team is wrapping up out there. Tonight or tomorrow night will be at the airport. Wednesday night will be here upstairs. Thursday night will be here in this room. All 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Thank you.
Correct.
And let's just take public interested comment and it's a presentation with comments.
Correct. It is 3 nights in a row of the same presentation, just geographically different locations, seeking input as well as providing information. Thursday night's meeting here is the output from those 3 days of events.
All right, thank you. Next on the one is a resolution, it'd be resolution number 2 on the placement of public notice signs. So this basically is transferring the responsibility to the petitioner versus the town. And this, what you said, this is pretty common practice.
I would say so. Certainly staff did a lot of heavy lifting to put this together. This would be an amendment to your rules of procedure to facilitate this. Janice, is there anything other specific items to mention here?
Well, you've done a great global viewpoint there. I think that I would turn to Roger because he had a lot of input in his former life going to other municipalities. So very briefly, let them know we're not unique here and other municipalities do transfer that responsibility to the petitioner.
As you know, petitioners are required to give public notice of hearings in 3 different ways. 1 is through a legal notice published in the newspaper. 2 is through mailings to surrounding landowners. And now we have signs that are posted on the subject property. Up until now, that responsibility of posting the signs on the property has been left to staff to do. And to be consistent for many reasons, one of which being consistent with other municipalities in the area, they place that responsibility on the petitioner. And then to verify that the petitioner hasn't done that, they are required to include that language in the affidavit that they submit to us, verifying that they've mailed things out, published, and they will also have a sign posted on the property.
Any questions, discussions?
Wayne, I had, or I guess Roger, I had one concern. It said we said outside of any public right of way by the petitioner at least 10 days prior. My concern is like on farm fields where the right of way is going to go right up to the county ditch and you put that sign in a soybean field or in a cornfield and they crop grows 6 inches over a month's period. How's that addressed?
It is tough. I know that when I was representing petitioners, there were times when we had to go find a unique spot where it would fit. Admittedly.
But it is staff's determination to walk the petitioner through that and suggest really good places for them to put that sign.
I had the same question on that because I had an experience, not personally, but with in another place where the sign was not set on the correct property. And it was like, that was not a good thing.
No,
Well, just one more reason not to have our staff do it.
Yeah.
You know, one more reason not to have our staff decide which crops get trampled on. Now, I'm from a rural county, so I can tell you that that's a sensitivity, but how much better for the petitioner who either controls the property or is buying it from the person who controls it. Better for them to make those kinds of decisions about where the sign would be placed, what crops might be cut down early, and that sort of thing. That actually, your example is a perfect reason why we should adopt this policy, which would remove that peril. You know, we don't want Janice getting shot at, being out on a farm, cutting down somebody's $15 beans. We don't want that. So.
All right, any further discussion?
On top of my thing, I said, I do understand. I didn't add that.
Now I know.
All right, so is there a motion to adopt resolution number 2?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Janice, roll please.
Mr. Franz,
Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski,
Aye.
Mr. Jones,
Aye.
Mrs. Walker,
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Fedor,
Aye.
Mrs. Madrick,
Aye.
That motion carries 7-0. And then final topic was from the earlier subcommittee for the town of Appaloosa. I had Larry Jones, Chris, and Josh all volunteering to be part of that.
Yes.
So is that a motion to form that subcommittee? Is that how that would work?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Janice,
yes.
roll. One more time. Watch
Mr.
out,
Franz,
guard. Aye.
Mrs. Grabanowski,
Aye.
Mr. Jones.
Aye.
Excuse me. Mrs. Walker.
Aye.
Mr. Lake,
Aye.
Mr. Fedor,
Aye.
Ms. Madrick,
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Any further business?
I move we adjourn.
Second? All in favor? We can do this by acclamation. Aye.
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 So, and then
We
I
have to
just
sign
realized,
stuff, right,
I
Janice?
just realized
before everyone leaves.
I may be
we all
pushing
need to
next